Passengers were filling up the cabin of a plane when two blind pilots, both wearing dark glasses, got onto the plane. One pilot was assisted by a seeing eye dog, and the other pilot was tapping his way along the aisle with a cane. Nervous laughter comes over the passengers as the two blind men enter the cockpit, close the door, and the engine revs up. The passengers begin nervously glancing around, searching for some sign that this is just some practical joke. None is forthcoming. The plane starts to move. It moves faster and faster and faster down the runway, and the people sitting in the window seats realize they're headed straight for the water at the edge of the runway. As it begins to look as though the plane is just going to plow into the water, panicked screams fill the cabin. At that very moment, the plane lifts smoothly into the air. The passengers laugh a little sheepishly and relax, and soon all retreat into their magazines, secure in the knowledge that the plane is in good hands. In the cockpit, one of the blind pilot turns to the other blind pilot and says, "You know, Bob, one of these days they're going to scream too late and we're all going to die." For some, you're catching up to it. For some, it'll be around 2 this afternoon. I ask you, do you feel secure that your life is in good hands? Does it feel at times like you're kind of flying blindly through life? It's tough to keep a bounce in our step when we fear the unknown. Psychologist Daniel Gilbert drew from the Gallup Healthways Well-Being Index and stated that the index showed that Americans are smiling less and worrying more. He concluded that the real problem is not financial, but that it all came down to one word: uncertainty. Uncertainty. People don't know what's going to happen. What's ahead in the future for me, people wonder. And Gilbert pointed to a Dutch experiment when, in one group, the subjects were told that they would be intensely shocked 20 times. The researchers then told a second group that they would receive 3 strong shocks and 17 mild ones, but they wouldn't know when the intense shocks would come. And the subjects in the second group sweated more and experienced faster heart rates than the first group. Uncertainty caused their discomfort. They didn't know when the shocks would come. And Gilbert concluded, he said, an uncertain future leaves us stranded in an unhappy present with nothing to do but wait. Our national gloom is real enough. But it isn't a matter of insufficient funds, it's a matter of insufficient certainty. Insufficient certainty. Now, isn't most of our worry and fears over what we don't know? I mean, which is worse? Not knowing or knowing something worse? How can we live well in an uncertain world? Well, that's the topic we take up this morning from Ecclesiastes chapter 11. You can turn in your Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 11. And we only have 2 weeks left in our study in Ecclesiastes. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to miss this book. Now, if you've been with us throughout the study, you've heard me say time and time again that Ecclesiastes is all about pushing us to live for what really matters in life. That if God isn't in it, it ain't worth it. And Solomon's under-the-sun perspective clues us in on the meaninglessness of a life that can be summed up with the words, get all you can all you get, and then sit on your can. And Solomon calls that way of life foolishness. foolishness. And what Solomon's under the sun perspective does for us is provide us with wisdom to live well in the days we have left here on earth, whatever that may be. And if we're going to live for what really matters, then we must make good choices that matter. And what we see here from Ecclesiastes chapter 11 is that much of those choices are in the context of a whole lot of uncertainty. Well, how can we live well when we face so much uncertainty? That's what this chapter is all about. Now, I'll tell you, this is one of my favorite chapters in the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, a phrase that's used 3 times in 6 verses of chapter 11 is the phrase, "you do not know." The end of verse 2 says, "You do not know what disaster may come upon the land." Verse 5, "You do not know the path of the wind." And then the middle of verse 6, "You do not know which will succeed." You do not know. Uncertainty. I ask you, how is it contributing? How is uncertainty contributing to your unhappiness right now? How does it have you kind of all in knots inside? You've seen the bumper sticker that says, "Life is uncertain, eat dessert first." Well, Solomon's saying life is uncertain, embrace it. Embrace it. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 is going to give us some down-to-earth practical principles for living well in an uncertain world. Principle number one. Principle number one, if we're going to live well in an uncertain world, is don't hoard, invest. Don't hoard, invest. Follow along as I read Ecclesiastes 11, verse 1. It says, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it again." Now, by the way, this verse has nothing to do with feeding ducks, okay, just in case you were wondering. Casting your bread upon the waters is not a common phrase for us, but it's a proverbial expression. It was a business proverb that addressed the merchants who would load their ships with grain and then be sent off. They would send those ships off. We might translate it, "Send out your grain in ships." In other words, load up your ship with grain, with bread, go across to the other side of the sea, and then sell it. Outsourcing, I think that's what we would call it, right? But they would not know for days what would come of their investment as they sent it out. They'd be waiting. They wouldn't know. Now here's the point. You won't see a return on your investment until you make an investment. You say, "Well, Pastor, that's rather obvious." But I have observed many people expecting a return when they haven't even deposited anything. Have you noticed that? Some are waiting for the ship to come in. They haven't even sent one out. I've watched people groan and grumble about the little they have received from the church and the little they have received from friendships and the little they have received from spiritual feeding, and yet they have not been willing to invest any time or money or talent and what have you. Too many people live like the man in the story Jesus told us about, who hid the talent in the ground for safekeeping. The man played it safe, and he received a rebuke, remember? Rebuke from his master when he returned. See, getting and keeping for oneself is rebuked. Releasing it and investing it is rewarded. And as Americans, we have been told that to be successful, we need to think in terms of getting, grabbing, holding on to. So we collect and we gather and we hoard. And we wonder why life is so unsatisfying and unrewarding. A good return in God's economy begins with giving it all away, releasing it, casting it upon the waters. And you ask, well, isn't it kind of risky to just start giving everything away? Absolutely. Absolutely. A man was lost in the desert, just dying for a drink of water, and he stumbled upon this old shack. And as he glanced around, he saw a pump about 13 feet away. It was an old, rusty water pump. He grabbed the handle of this water pump and he began to pump up and down, and nothing came out. So disappointed, he kind of staggered away from the water pump, and he noticed off to the side this old jug. He looked at this old jug, and he wiped away the dirt and the dust, and he read a message that was on the jug, and it said this. It said, "You have to prime the pump with all the water in this jug. P.S. Be sure to fill the jug again before you leave." Well, the man popped the cork out of the jug, and sure enough, this jug was full of water, and he was dying for thirst, and suddenly he was faced with a decision. If he drank the water, he could satisfy his immediate thirst. But if he poured all that water into the pump as the instructions were given, maybe it would yield fresh, cool water from down deep in the well, all the water he wanted. He studied the possibilities of both options. What should he do? Pour it all into the pump and take a chance on fresh, cool water, or drink what was in the old jug and ignore its message? I mean, should he just waste all the water in the hopes of these flimsy instructions written no telling how long ago? Well, reluctantly, he poured all that water into the pump, every single drop. He grabbed the handle and he began to pump. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Nothing came out. Squeak, squeak, squeak. A little bit began to dribble out, and then a small stream, and finally it just gushed with water. To his relief, fresh, cool water poured out of the rusty pump, and eagerly he filled the jug and he drank from it. He filled up the jug another time, and once again he drank its refreshing contents. And then he filled the jug for the next traveler, popped the cork back on, and then he added this little note. He said, "Believe me, it really works. You have to give it all away before you can get anything back." We are faced with those kind of options every single day. Do we settle for something ordinary by keeping it for ourselves, or do we give it all away and really live? Do we simply drink from an old jug of water, or do we find true refreshment by giving it away? Proverbs 11:25 has this to say, "A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed." What are you giving away? What are you giving away? What investments are you making? Notice verse 2. He goes on to say, "Give portions to 7, yes, to 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land." Do you see what this is saying? It is suggesting that we are to invest in several places and not in just one place. It's to diversify. Now, in that day, when merchant ships went out, it was possible that they would not return if something could happen to them. Some disaster would happen and that ship would not come back. And so he's saying it, don't put all your grain in one ship. Spread out your investments so that if one ship went down, you wouldn't lose it all. So give portions to 7, yes, even to 8 places. A modern cliche would be, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Invest in more than one place. That's what it's saying. So if you're married, you'd invest in your spouse, but I would say not only in your spouse, invest in other married couples. Invest in younger families. If you have children or grandchildren, invest in them, but not only in them. There are other ways we can invest in the next generation. Are you looking for those ways, or are you just saying, no, I'm going to stay one-dimensional? Invest in the church. Invest in your brothers and sisters in Christ. Invest in ministry opportunities. I'm not saying try and do it all, but we need to think perhaps outside the box and keep looking for ways to give away our resources. And don't just think money here, because your talents and your energy and your time and your gifts, don't hoard, invest. See, God's blessings are meant to be shared, not hoard it. That's principle number one for living well in an uncertain world. We come to principle number two. Don't wait until you have all the facts. Act. Don't wait until you have all the facts. Act. Follow along. Look at verse 3. If clouds are full of water, they pour rain upon the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or to the north, and the place where it falls, there it will lie. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. What is this saying? Well, Solomon here gives us some agricultural realities. The farmer does not know if what he sows will be washed away by some flood. He does not know. He does not know if the wind just might take down a tree that lands on his barn. He does not know. But what must he do? He must sow his seeds diligently anyway. If a farmer waits for perfect conditions before he plants, he will never get around to planting anything. That's the point. And yet, that's how some people go about their lives. They wait for all the facts before they act. They will do nothing until all the information is in. It's called, we know, a paralysis by analysis. Ross Perot was speaking about GM, and he said, I come from an environment where if you see a snake, you kill it. At GM, if you see a snake, the first thing you do is hire a consultant on snakes. Then you get a committee on snakes. And then you sit around and discuss snakes for the next few years. The most likely course of action is nothing. You figure the snake hasn't bitten anybody, so you just let him crawl around on the factory floor. That's how we live sometimes. Well, we need to discuss that some more. I can't make a decision yet. I don't have all the information. And I have watched people, and so have you, just agonize over a decision because they want to be sure they have all the information before deciding. And they even go about and they write this pros and cons list. Have you ever done that? I've done this. I'm not saying that it's always wrong to do that, but what I found out whenever I did that, at some point in there, I still didn't have enough information. I had insufficient certainty. I had to still make a decision, even though pros had one more than a con. I go, I don't know. Maybe I'll wait this out some more. Maybe I'll talk to 10 more people. See, doesn't most of life work that way? Doesn't it all line up for us? If we wait for ideal conditions before we get together with others, which sometimes we do that, right? I can't get together yet. And so we wait for ideal conditions, or if we wait till all of our questions are answered before we choose to live for Christ, or for everything to fall into place before we walk in obedience, then we will do nothing. Don't wait until you have all the facts. Act. Because you don't know, and neither do I. You'll have to trust God with what you know, and you'll have to trust God with what you don't know. And that's where most of life is lived. So I ask you, in what way are you waiting on the wind? Have you put your life on hold until your conditions improve? How much you're waiting on the wind, be honest here, how much you're waiting on the wind just be an excuse for not doing what you know you should be doing? Are you hiding behind over-analysis? Do you sense that God just might be prompting you to launch out over into some new direction, but you're overwhelmed by the details of how it's all going to work out, and you say, nope, I can't move yet. I can't do this yet. Listen, you do not know how it will all come together. You do not know. You do not know the twists and turns of life. But loved ones, don't just sit around and do nothing. That's what he's saying. Many years ago now, Lillian Cox turned 103 years of age. At that time, she was listed as the oldest woman to get a driver's license in Florida. Now, whether she should be driving or not, that's a topic for another day. But Lillian was asked the secret of looking so good and having so much spunk at 103. Matter of fact, that was her nickname, Spunky. How do you have so much spunk? She answered, drink a lot of water and don't just sit around and do nothing. 103! Oh, that we might have that kind of spunk. What are we doing sitting around watching the wind? Do something. Why do we worry about where the tree falls? Get on with life. Because life with God is an adventure. Embrace it. Embrace it. I got to go to principle number 3. Don't try and figure out God's plan. Trust. Don't try and figure out God's plan. Trust. Look at verse 5. It says, as you do not know the path of the wind or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. You see, he's saying that there are mysteries in life, and Solomon lists 3 mysteries here. The first mystery is, he says, we do not know the way the wind blows. We do not know the way the wind blows. We don't know the path of the winds. Secondly, we do not know how that baby is formed in the womb. That's a mystery of life. Now even though modern technology allows us to see that activity in the womb, we still don't understand it. I mean, who doesn't walk away from a sonogram totally blown away by what your eyes just saw, right? I mean, the process is a mystery. And then Solomon adds a third mystery, mystery number 3, we cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. We cannot get our minds around his plan. We do not know what he's going to do before he does it. And we do not know why he did what he did. It was all a mystery. What do we do with that mystery? What do we do? Can't understand this. I don't understand what God's doing. What do we do? Verse 6 answers that. It says, sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let not your hands be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. Now, in a way, that's a summary statement of how we're to approach the uncertainties of life, because we don't know how God will work. What are we to do? Sow our seeds anyway. Stay busy, stay active, work hard, serve him faithfully, and leave the results with God. Trust him with the results. Now, this is very relevant to the times we live in. We are a result-oriented society. We have an obsession with success in our day, and sadly, that seduction of success has crept into the evangelical church in America. We can so easily equate sheer numbers or square footage with ministry success. I'm not saying that's not important. I'm not saying that numerical growth never matters. It's just not an effective way to measure success. And so the church's tendency, and we've seen it over and over again to ad nauseum, the church's tendency to simply take what successful churches are doing and duplicate it. And what happens? Our trust easily shift to some method or to the size of one's ministry. Listen, we do not know how God will work in our world. We don't. So we continue to do what? Sow seeds. Try different things. Work hard. Venture out. And leave the results with God. We don't know when our efforts will succeed. We get all hung up on it sometime. But listen, the final outcomes are in the hands of the Lord. They are in the capable hands of the one who harnesses the wind, who dispenses the rain, hand forms the baby in the womb. He's the one at the controls. It may feel like he's blindly leading us at times, but he is not. He knows what will come of every seed sown, every effort taken. And I don't know about you, but that's exciting to me. Because the results aren't up to me. That is exciting. The pressure's off. The pressure's off. And I put way too much pressure on myself around this, and it's not up to me. And it's not up to you either. I don't need to know how God will use my work. I just need to diligently sow, and He makes it grow. I just need to work hard and leave the results with Him. So much more to say around this. I need to get to the last principle, though. Enjoy your life, but don't waste it. Enjoy your life, but don't waste it. Now, Solomon's final words here around uncertainty speak to every age and every season of life. Richard Needham reported the 7 stages of man. You know what the 7 stages of man are? Spills, drills, thrills, bills, ills, pills, and wills. You are in one of those stages. Listen to what he says, verse 7. Light is sweet, and it pleases the eyes to see the sun. However many years a man may live, let him enjoy them all. But let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many. Everything to come is meaningless. He's addressing here the aging process. There's going to be a day when the light is dim and there's darkness ahead of us. He's speaking under the sun here. Don't take New Testament and put it in here about heaven. He's not talking about that. Under the sun, aging process. And we don't like to talk about aging. There's so much uncertainty about it. We'd kind of rather live in denial, wouldn't we? Reminded of a woman who was sitting in the waiting room for her first appointment with a new dentist. She noticed his diploma on the wall, which bore his full name. And suddenly she remembered that a tall, handsome, dark-haired boy with the same name had been in her high school class so many years ago. Could this be the same guy I had a crush on way back then, she wondered. Well, she quickly dismissed such a thought when she walked into the office and she met the balding, gray-haired man with a deeply lined face. Oh, he's way too old to have been my classmate, she thought to herself. Well, after examining her teeth, she had to ask anyway, did you happen to attend Morgan Park High School? Yes, I did, he gleamed with pride. When did you graduate, she asked. 1959, he replied. You were in my class, she exclaimed. Really? He said, looking at her closely. What did you teach? Ouch. Listen, we've done it. We have done it. Young people, you don't understand that one. We need to face up to the reality we are getting older. But Solomon here exhorts us to enjoy our days, he says, all of them. However many years a man may live, let him enjoy them all. Listen, are you enjoying your days? You're enjoying your days. Smiling less, worrying more? Or you're enjoying your days? And young person, are you enjoying your days? Because verse 9 says, be happy, young man. Be happy, young man, while you're young. And let your heart give you joy in the days of your youth. Enjoy your days. You know, as we get older, and I've done this, we get older, we kind of look down on young people enjoying life, don't we? You know, it's not all about fun and games. You need to grow up and get serious. There are advantages to being young. Young person, are you making the most of those advantages? Are you wishing your life away for the next stage in your life, missing the opportunities and advantages you have right now? Because you do, you have them. Now Solomon goes on in verse 9. He says, follow the ways of your heart, and whatever your eyes see, he kind of gives it this, go for it kind of cheer. You know, enjoy life, go for it all, but then he adds, but know that for all these things God will bring you to judgment. See, he kind of puts a damper on the whole thing. Kind of like saying, go for it and eat all the candy you want, but all your teeth are going to fall out, right? Now, the word for young people here, though, get this, is to enjoy your life now, not later. But don't waste your life. See, enjoying life is not a license to dishonor the Lord and do whatever you want. That's not freedom, by the way. That's bondage. If you go outside the boundaries God has set up, it's only going to lead to anxiety and troubles later. That's how he sums it up in verse 10. He says, so then banish anxiety from your heart. Cast all the troubles off your body, for youth and vigor are meaningless. He's saying, young person, enjoy your life, but there's some things you need to say no to, because if you don't say no to them, they're only going to cause frustration and guilt and pain and anxiety later on in life. That's what he's saying. You got to have guardrails. Pro baseball great and Hall of Famer Mickey Mantle played 18 seasons. He was voted MVP 3 times. He was an All-Star 16 times. He earned himself 7 World Series rings. And while he accomplished much as a player for the New York Yankees, his personal life was an absolute mess. His 40 years of drinking so badly damaged his liver that he was told bluntly by a doctor that his next drink could be his last. He admitted later on in life that he had often been cruel and hurtful to his family and friends and fans because of his drinking problem. And he did finally receive treatment for his alcohol abuse and is said to have even come to faith in Christ prior to his death. In July 1995, however, he attended a press conference. It would prove to be his last press conference as he was going to pass away 1 month later. And in her biography of Mickey Mantle, Jane Levy recounts, she says, it was a standing room only conference. His comic timing was still acute, but his robust physique, the Popeye muscles, and the untroubled face of American plenty were gone. His suit hung on his desiccated frame. He looked like death. And Mantle stood up to the microphone and he said, God gave me a great body and an ability to play baseball. God gave me everything, and I just threw it all away. Threw it all away. What would be remembered the most was the anguished plea to young people. Mantle said, I'd like to say to the kids out there, if you're looking for a role model, this is the role model. Don't be like me. A reporter asked Mantle if he had signed a donor card. And Mantle replied, everything I've got is worn out, he said. And although I've heard people say they'd like to have my heart, for it's never been used. How sad. Oh, how sad. One example. I had several I could give you. Enjoy your life, but don't waste it. We don't know what lies ahead. But that isn't to be an excuse for living irresponsible. We can live well in an uncertain world. Don't hoard, invest. Don't wait for all the facts, act. And don't try and figure out God's plan. Trust. Because our future is not in the hands of one leading us blindly. We can trust Him at the controls. At halftime in a high school basketball game in Bristow, Oklahoma, they would have contests for previously selected fans. One contest involved blindfolding the participants, and when the buzzer sounded, these blindfolded participants would run around and try to pick up money which was scattered around on the gym floor. Most of the time, the contestants did not do very well. They picked up a few random bills, but not many. On one occasion, however, there was this one man who did exceptionally well. He went right to the biggest bills, and he took in quite a haul. Could he see through his blindfold? No. Well, how did he do it? Why did he do so well? Well, the man explained later on how he had watched previously how most people just run around the gym without direction, let the screams of the crowd direct them this way and direct them that way, and it's all futility. So he planned in advance that he was going to pick out one person who could see the money on the floor. And he would tune in and listen to this one person, this one voice who could see what he could not see, and let this one person direct him to the money. And so he did. Isn't that what we must do right there? God can see what we can't see. He has more information than we do. In fact, he knows everything. He knows what we don't know. So we must trust him with what we know and trust him with what we don't know. Because we can live well in an uncertain world when we live that way. And what do we need to do in the meantime when we don't know? Sow our seeds and then leave the results with him. Because he can be trusted with all those seeds. All of them.